Hello, everybody. So today, the topic we're going to be going over is going to be the impact patterns and zones. So I know this might not be a topic that everyone understands, so we're going to get right into it and hope you all are ready for the show. So first and foremost, both of these, though some people might find it funny, there are definitely ways of showing the impacts on how either walking through the woods affects for like, the trails and or blacktop for concrete, making it where it's a permanent zone. So there's multiple ways uh, to have the different impact patterns. So you have different zone impact zones. Um, the one with the highest impact is, as you would guess, called the impact zone. It has a high impact area. The soil degrades, gets compressed a lot. The vegetation is highly disturbed, and if it's by the water, there's more likely of having the nutrition leaking into the water because of all of the back and forth. Um, the campsites that are kept small affect the least, even though that's not what's happening right here. But the people really don't realize, but impacts happen really quick. So it's something that even after maybe one, two, three times of use, happen like gets quick to be fully impacted. So it's something that people have to realize. Um, Another place you have is your intersite zone. The interaction between the individuals and the wilderness, it's kind of like a medium level for impact. Typically, your trails aren't as like this. They're not typically like it at all. It's more so worn down paths that you see in the woods, typically like a deer trail almost. That would kind of be like the same. Um, it just deteriorates the ground cover a little bit, but that's it. It slightly compromises the vegetation, but really the vegetation is able to come back from it. Um, Typically, this is what people call as trailblazing, because they're not informal or proper trails, but they end up becoming their quote unquote official trails that they have, which is not always good if there are proper trails already. So, an example of the impact. Um, So we have the vegetation in an intersite zone is very susceptible to trampling, as you can see right here. The trailblazing that we were talking about earlier, how like they wore a path, and so that's where the vegetation is avoiding. And you can see it right here as well for the sheet erosion because of the lack of trees right here, lack of tree roots, lack of vegetation on the top for it to hold the surface. So there's sheet erosion, there's the gully erosion. So it's all taking all the soil away. So the lowest of the second least impact area is called buffer zone. Level of impact is low. There are few impacts that occur this area, mainly either hiking, fire, like getting some firewood, and or like passing through to a roadway. Those are typically the only times you'll actually affect the buffer zone, and that's typically where the vegetation that has a lower res resilience and higher resistance are. So there's no active management of the vegetation or soil because the buffer zone is typically all natural. There's nothing really keeping it away. So that's what most of the time happens. So your temporal patterns for the impacts, basically about how long it takes for a place to be considered impacted. It at first, depending on how heavy the use is or how much it is, um, will occur very steeply, very quick. It will become very much impacted, but after a few a few years, as this graph right here shows after like 2 years, it starts plateauing out because it really can't get impacted beyond what it is. So, and like a few examples of this, so like the hiking, the trailblazing, because people don't like following sometimes. So like you'll have your trailblazers. So there's four trails. They tend to widen over time because of the extended use. It's best to monitor those and block the trails that you don't want people on, so they can be reclaimed by the forest. Um, some campsites like will tend to expand and change over time. This one you can tell there's a lot of littering. You can tell there's a fire pit here. So like the conditions can change, which unfortunately means that people are going to end up finding different places to camp because of situations like that. So the resistance versus resilience. So resistance is the amount of disturbance the environment can take before it starts degrading and not being able to really recover. Typically, plants that have a high resistance don't have a high resilience, but there are exceptions to that. And a good and resilience is the amount of impact the environment can come back from before being permanently destroyed, basically before it can't come back. So, an example right here. So the forest might not have a high resistance to the flames, to the fire, but there are trees that use fire as a way of opening up their cones so that they're able to germinate and seed and basically still make sure there's coverage in the trees. So they might have a high resilience, or there are vegetation that have thick barks that makes them fire retardant and have all their branches on the top so that they're not affected. So recovery rates typically it all depends on how much they were used. Typically, the more heavy usage, it typically depends on how much it is and how long it takes to recover. But overall, it takes a lot longer to recover from from what happened from the impact than it does to impact the environment, which is why it has to be managed properly. And that, my friends, is impact patterns. So I hope you all learned the difference between the resistance and resilience, the different kind of impact zones and patterns, and how quickly it can take to impact an area. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and see y'all next time.